welcome to this week's edition of World Today. We'll continue to focus on Afghanistan, where the global community is now not only having to deal with the Taliban regime in Kabul, but also to focus on the humanitarian crisis that the Afghans now face, ensuring protection and security to Afghans who've been left behind and who continue to remain in Afghanistan. It is a new Afghanistan, a republic no longer but an emirate. The 20-year journey to become and remain a republic reversed in a matter of weeks. While the Taliban have won the war within, they're still a long way from becoming recognized as a state by the international community. It is the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan that is recognized under the United Nations. Will that change to Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan is the question.
The new Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan is here. The Taliban is likely to follow the Iran model if statements from its leaders are an indication. Mullah Baradar could become the supreme leader. Abdul Ghani Baradar might get picked as president. The regime might also have a prime minister. The Taliban is engaging local leaders and tribal elders from across the country. It has already appointed governors, police chiefs and police commanders for provinces and districts. The Naya Afghanistan in the making throws up new challenges to the world. Unlike the 90s, isolation of the Taliban regime may not be an option. The new dispensation is coming with the legitimacy provided by the United States of America and the backing of P5 nations like Russia and China.
No one should assess that we are currently considering an easing of sanctions on the Taliban. That is not actively being discussed or pursued. We've not reduced sanctions pressure on the Taliban leaders or the significant restrictions on their access to the international financial system. And we will judge, and we want to make this very clear. We are going to judge the Taliban by their actions, and we will stay in close coordination with the international community on any steps that we take moving forward. Now, at the same time, we also want to ensure there is assistance to the Afghan people, humanitarian assistance and other assistance to keep them afloat and make sure they have, we provide that from the international community at this point in time.
For most nations, the biggest fear is rise in terror and safe havens that the vast country could provide to terror outfits.
We will judge the behavior and so will engagement according with the commitment of the Afghan government for Afghanistan not to serve as a base for the export of terrorism to other countries. Second, the respect for human rights, in particular women's rights, the rule of law, and freedom of the media.
This, even as clashes between the Taliban and the Panjshir resistance continue. This is Gulbahar, the entry point to Panjshir. Taliban have blown up an important bridge encircling Panjshir, choking the supply routes.
We will fight anyone who opposes the Islamic Emirate system.
The resistance fighters are undeterred. They have been brought up on tales of valors of the legendary Tajik commander Ahmad Shah Massoud and his resistance of both the Taliban and the Soviets. The young generation too wants to live up to the legends. The Taliban have sought reinforcements to take on the resistance fighters at Panjshir, and the siege is expected to go on much longer.
Taliban have suffered heavy losses, but the area is under siege and transportation routes are all closed.
The fear is writ large on faces of people.
The ongoing war has affected the local population in Gulbahar at the entry point of Panjshir. They live in fear amidst warning food supplies.
Gulbahar market is running out of supplies and the streets are deserted.
People in Panjshir will face shortage of food and medicines. Roads should be reopened.
Food prices have doubled due to the conflict and people fear the worst is yet to come.
India Today and Ashdaq, the only channels on ground to report from battlefield Panjshir. The Taliban launched an attack at 11 p.m. on Tuesday night. You can hear the gunshot in the background. The officer style ongoing. Casualties expect both sides. Will Ahmad Masood and Amrullah Saleh be able to resist Taliban's all-out attack? We will report every detail from battlefield Panjshir. Ahmad Naveed Kavish reporting from Gulbahar, Panjshir.
As the Taliban are all set to govern Afghanistan, there are still many who are within Afghanistan and fear persecution for having sided with the foreign forces. Many who've been left behind and who the United States of America are still trying to evacuate. Of them, there is an interpreter who helped rescue US President Joe Biden in a 2008 Afghan snowstorm when Joe Biden had gone visiting to Afghanistan as a senator. This photo from 2008 shows the interpreter who was working for the US Army alongside Biden, who was the chair of the Foreign Relations Committee, and the two other senior senators, Chuck Hagel and John Kerry. They were stuck in a snowstorm and at risk of attack by the Taliban. The interpreter and many other Afghan personnel joined a small military quick reaction force which drove from Bagram Air Base into the mountains to rescue the senators. Today, many of those Afghan allies seek help. They want to leave Afghanistan.
First, our message to him is thank you for fighting by our side for the last 20 years. Thank you for the role you played in helping a number of my favorite people out of a snowstorm and for all of the work you did. And our commitment is enduring, not just to American citizens, but to our Afghan partners who have fought by our side. And our efforts and our focus right now is, as you heard General McKenzie say and others say over the last 24 hours, is to the diplomatic phase. We will get you out. We will honor your service.
In that congressional team visiting Afghanistan was then Senator Joe Biden's foreign policy advisor, Jonah Blank, who joins me to discuss the situation on the ground, the decision by the United States of America of troop withdrawal, and the Al-Qaeda-Taliban conundrum. You were rescued by the very same people who are now stuck in Afghanistan. They're crying out for help, and it doesn't seem like the American establishment, the US administration, has much to offer when it comes to rescuing them and evacuation of America's Afghan allies. What is your take on how the evacuations have taken place and how the American forces left before every single American and Afghan ally was out of Afghanistan?
We now know of at least one person, according to the Wall Street Journal, an interpreter named Muhammad, who was on that mission. I only found out about this when I read the story in the Wall Street Journal, but there may well have been others. We don't know, or at least I don't know. We do know that thousands, tens of thousands of Afghan interpreters and other personnel have performed similar services for American troops and diplomats over the past 20 years, and only a portion of them have been evacuated. So to get to your point, Gita, I personally feel that this should be a top priority of the U.S. government to effect the evacuation of everyone who wishes to leave and to put their lives at risk for Americans over the past 20 years.
Well, Jonah, in terms of the decision of withdrawal, of pulling out of Afghanistan. Now, President Biden says that the U.S. motive to enter Afghanistan was to finish Al-Qaeda, and that job has been done. But with the reports that are coming in, the kind of conversations that we're seeing, the celebrations that we're seeing within the Al-Qaeda camp of the Taliban having returned to Afghanistan, it doesn't seem like the job has been done and Al-Qaeda is finished?
Well, I don't think there ever was, this is my own personal view, I don't think there ever was a possibility that every single Al-Qaeda member anywhere in the world would be terminated. That was certainly not my expectation back in 2001 when I was advising Joe Biden on this. And I don't believe that was his expectation either. It's an unrealistic standard. But Osama bin Laden was taken out of play in the most extreme way possible a decade ago. And Al-Qaeda has not posed a threat to the United States remotely on par with what it posed in 2001. So in that sense, I think that the mission was accomplished 10 years ago. Does that mean that the U.S. has no role in Afghanistan going forward? Well, that's a different question. Joe Biden, I can say, soured on the Afghanistan mission over a decade ago, and he was ahead of the curve. I was about 9 months later in coming to that view. I think whenever one comes to that view, it would be very hard to say that the U.S. really was performing a role that benefited the Afghan people, the American people, the people of India, really of any nation, that was in line with the very clear downsides that this intervention had been causing.
Well, in terms of strategic position, do you think America still holds a strategic position in the region, having left Afghanistan completely, having withdrawn from Afghanistan completely? I ask you this is because you see a more stronger role and position of Moscow and Beijing right now, even at the United Nations Security Council. The resolution that was passed was without Russia and China as part of the resolution that was fronted by the United States of America. So somewhere, has there been a strategic loss?
The U.S. is no longer the sole dominant power, nor should it be, in my view. The U.S. will always be one of the leading powers. In many cases where it chooses to be, it can take the foremost role. But I don't think the United States wants to or should be the dominant power everywhere at all times. I don't think that's what people in the region wish. I don't think that's what the American people wish. And I think that to the extent that this becomes a more diffuse power structure with China and Russia hopefully playing a constructive role, I think that would be a good thing. Will they actually play a constructive role? Well, that remains to be seen. But I think the idea that the U.S. should stay there simply for the goal of being predominant, that I'm unconvinced of, and clearly President Biden is unconvinced of.
But recognizing a Taliban government, do you think that will take time? That every country is going to wait and watch?
I think most countries will wait and watch. There may be some that move much more quickly. As you know, during the 1990s, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates were the only countries in the world that recognized the Taliban. The precise mix of countries that might do so this time is different. We may well see China and Russia moving more quickly than some other countries. We may well see, that's right. So we may, exactly. We may well see Qatar moving very quickly. And that's not necessarily a bad thing if Qatar moves more quickly, because there needs to be some sort of intermediary. However, for countries like the US and India, I at least would advocate that they take a slower approach, that they wait and see, that they make the Taliban show them rather than simply accept kind words and rhetoric about their future behavior.
In the coming days, we'll know what exactly the Afghan administration will be looking like and what their policies are really going to be. Jana, many thanks for joining us here in India Today to share your perspective on Afghanistan and the future when it comes to the global community. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome back to World Today. Before I take you through what is happening in the world of COVID, let's take you through all the other news that has done the rounds from across the globe in World at a Glance.
New Zealand authorities identified the attacker of Auckland supermarket stabbing incident as an extremist inspired by the Islamic State group. They were following him round the clock and were able to shoot and kill him within 60 seconds of him unleashing a frenzied knife attack that wounded 6 people on 4th September. 3 of the shoppers were taken to Auckland hospitals in critical condition, while another was in serious condition and 2 more were in moderate condition. New Zealand Prime Minister said the incident was a terror attack. Dozens have died in 6 US eastern states of Connecticut, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania and Virginia after Hurricane Ida brought unprecedented rainfall to some areas. Parts of a major interstate through New York City remained flooded. The remnants of Hurricane Ida dumped historic rain over New York City as basement apartments suddenly filled with water and freeways and boulevards turned into rivers, submerging cars. Japan's Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga won't run for leadership of the governing party at the end of this month. This paves the way for a new Japanese leader after Suga took charge just a year before. Ruling LDP has the majority in Japanese parliament, meaning whoever LDP elects, the party's leader becomes the new Prime Minister. The campaign is slated to officially start from 17 September. A Texas law banning most abortions in the state took effect on 1st September. US Supreme Court is still silent on an emergency appeal to put the law on hold. US President Joe Biden called the new Texas anti-abortion law as almost un-American, in that it creates pernicious vigilante system.
With the beginning of September, schools across the world are opening their doors to students. With campuses opening, they're ensuring that strict COVID restrictions are maintained and vaccination drives are carried out to ensure children are safe from a possible COVID surge after the summer break.
"12 million French children returned to school for the new academic year." The French President Emmanuel Macron visited a primary school in the southern city of Marseille. This is not the first time French schools have opened their doors for the students during the pandemic. In fact, France maintained one of the highest rates of in-person classes during COVID-19 crisis in the world. As per the latest data, more than 63% of children and teenagers aged 12 to 17 have received at least one shot in France, and 47% are fully vaccinated. Schools will have offered to organize shots for those who sign up for vaccination. Even the UK has tried to open schools before.
We've been in and out of lockdowns for the past 2 years, and obviously it's quite important since we're in year 11.
All my GCSE work so far has kind of had this disruption that it'd be nice to kind of just go through, at least a term or whatever without any kind of isolation.
British Education Secretary Gavin Williamson confirmed that mass testing of students for COVID-19 in English schools would help control infections. Hundreds of thousands of students returned to schools in the UK in the first week of September, with most COVID restrictions. The majority of elementary and high school students returned to their classrooms at the beginning of the school year in Serbia and Bosnia. Amid rising numbers of coronavirus cases, children and teachers are always to wear masks and follow other virus measures. But they are happy to be back in school.
We are glad the classes will take place in this way. We hope that this situation with corona is coming to an end.
More than 2 million students returned to in-class education in schools across Jordan. In one of the hardest hit European countries, schools in the Czech Republic were closed most of the school year. They fully reopened on 24th May, just weeks before the summer break. The Czech Republic has made it compulsory for students to undergo 3 tests at the beginning of the school year. In Israel, 2.4 million students returned to class despite having one of the world's highest rates of infections due to the rapid spread of the Delta variant.
We've been 18 months, in this ongoing story, so we're pretty used to it right now. This is the new normal for us, and whatever comes, we can deal with it.
Israel hopes to contain the spread of the new Delta variant with the use of rapid virus tests and green passes for vaccinated teachers. Taiwan students have been back in school since 1st September after having online classes since mid-May. Parents across the world are waiting for their wards to go back to school, and children in countries where studies are still online are waiting for their opportunity to return.
That's all in this edition of World Today, but before I go, I'll leave you with these visuals of hope and despair. Hope that maybe women across Afghanistan will continue to fight for their rights. These are visuals of women protesting in Herat and Kabul, expecting that the new government give them equal rights to education, and women's rights are respected. But in some cases, they were beaten up by the Taliban.